How y'all doing? I would say welcome back, but this is a new edition. This is the Lions Den podcast. I'm Germ Zion, who I got next to me.
What's up, baby? I'm Trent.
What's good? Good. It's Tyreek here.
And we here coming at you live. So the Lions Den podcast is not your average podcast. We're not talking about where the hoes at. We're not talking about, celebrity drama necessarily. We ain't talking about none of that. We talking about real life in real time. And today we have a special topic for y'all right here. We got the topic of where did manhood go? So I got three dope men with me, you know what I'm saying? We've all kind of been doing this life thing, and we all tapped in at once and kind of was just realizing, like, you know what, bro? There's something deeper to this life.
It's time to go.
You feel me? It's time to go. It's time to dig in and realize where we can grow at, where mistakes are being made at, and not only that, to share with y'all, and hopefully y'all can walk this road with us. So right now, I want to ask: do y'all think that something has happened to masculinity in this time of age that we're living in? Is it the same?
I don't think so. I don't think it's the same just off the strength of the times we in, with all this instant stimulation. I feel like manhood starts off with being focused. You feel me? And it's hard to stay focused out here with so many things at will you can just do to get off track of what you know you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. That's the first thing a man's supposed to do, have a vision, a purpose, and a road he walking down to get somewhere. But every day it's just something new pop up on your phone. It's a new place outside to go. That's where to start. That's where it starts at me personally. So.
What about you, T?
I think really you gotta go back to like what makes a man a man.
Right.
Because we can't identify where we are now based off, this is characteristics. That's what manhood characteristics of what a man is. And I can say over time, I think the definition or the standard for a man has changed. Which means, yes, manhood has changed. We got probably three different perspectives of this couch.
So let's go there. What ideally, historically makes a man versus then we can say what do we think today men are. You know what I mean? So historically, what's some traits that a man would have? Let's say we're back in our granddaddy generation where they swear the man was just all that in a bag of chips. What is the qualities of a man before all this social media and technology? You know what I mean? And before all this social media and technology, you know what I mean?
That's a good one. It starts with, I think the first one is our physical strength. Okay. Easily. So like when I think about the fact that when we look at everything built around us, when we look at these skyscrapers, when we look at think of the James Brown song, it's a man's world. It's crazy. But would it be nothing? Yeah. This man without a woman or a girl. You feel me? Because it's like, okay, there was women, we couldn't do it without women in the fact of producing and, being able to hold things down. But it's like, at the end of the day, when we look at everything in this world, this man don't name train tracks, light bulbs, buildings, cars. Everything that we live in was built from men. And not only that, but our brute strength, you know what I'm saying? I think something that doesn't get acknowledged is our mentality.
That's good.
Of like being able to, like how you started off, speaking on purpose. How at one point there was not a car. Right. But it took a man to sit back, and how did he get the calling and the message to say, you know what, we need to build a mobile.
To make life easier.
to make life easier.
And that goes back to the amount of focus.
Yeah.
I think back then there was just a higher level of focus and there wasn't so much stimulants so people could sit down and really, men give up easier today. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you look at something you don't understand and you'll be like, that's just too much for me. But back then I was like, this is a real problem we need to solve. We're going to lock in for years and fail and try again and try again. That's quality of a man.
That's true. That's
true. Fact. Not giving up on what you believe you can accomplish. You know what I mean?
That's true. What you got, Trent?
I'll also say off that is also consistency. Because like my age, I look back at my grandpa, uncles and all them, they never switched jobs. Like, you know what I mean? Like if big uncle out there is a farmer, he been a farmer for years.
His whole life.
If grandpa's in the factory, he been in the factory for years. You know what I mean? And I don't think you can't say it's a good thing or a bad thing. We don't do it now in this generation. But back in the day, they was consistent no matter what, bro.
Consistency, focus. It's not so much about the money.
Yeah.
You be a real man and work at the plant and take care of your family. You know what I mean? You be a real man and do whatever you want to do.
And probably never got a raise.
As long as you got the qualities of consistency, focus, and determination, that's the start.
But what happened? What happened to us not wanting to be that no more?
Jeez.
What turned people off to where it was like, I don't know. It was like this weird time where it's like the economy is. I speak just specifically on America's economy. It's not the same economy that our great granddad grew up in. But then at the same time, it seems like a lot of us resisted the blue collar jobs, all these type of things. You know, I know college came through, and you know what I'm saying, we did the college. I think there's more technicalities to the world. But don't y'all think the world is gonna die off if it's like we don't tap back into like our just brute strength of just building?
Yeah.
I think maybe not. I think that we can adapt to what the world is today. I think it's 10 times easier to get the things done they got done back then today. I just don't think we have the will and determination as a whole like they did back then. You know, we got artificial intelligence. I was sending you how you can do this and do that. We can have stuff up in minutes. But where's the focus at? You know what I mean? Like, building is going to probably be taken over by machinery, right? There's nothing we can do about that. But what can we do around that to make sure the culture is changing to what needs to be? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question.
Because it's just speaking off of, when we speak about, like, to me personally, when I think of that main quality of like a man, it's just that physical brute strength, the violence. Not only that, like, this is something that I think people don't realize, like, I think it gets fed into that whole toxic masculinity thing, but men, we can get violent. In that sense.
For violence,
and when you think about war, who's leading wars?
Men, for sure.
And when it comes down to it, like, for me personally, when I think about it, when we go back to the old times, people was just taking land, like, and there wasn't like, I feel like women's in, they thinking like, oh, that's wrong, though, that's wrong. But it's like, for us men, we was pulling up on people's lands and was like, oh, y'all got that, we want that, and we was just taking.
Right.
And that's not a thing anymore.
So you saying you think that's a positive trait of manhood, or do you think that's just natural?
He gonna say yeah.
I don't know.
He gonna say yeah. No, check out. I know he gonna say yeah though.
Because
check this
also
out.
part of being manly is being able to make deals. You know what I mean? Being able to make a deal without bullying somebody or stealing and robbing and abusing them. I don't think that makes a true man. You know, a true man shouldn't be a person that don't build their own thing. They steal somebody else's. You know what I mean? Don't want to get into why, but you know, that's a quality that's been used against us as black people. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say that's the way to go.
But check this out. It's the reason he said yes, bro. It's culture. Jern, where are you rooted from?
Liberia.
Where are we rooted from, basically? America.
Right.
So you have a different perspective what a manhood or a man should be based off your lineage.
Maybe it could be, because I mean, my thing is Liberia was the first free republic, and either way, we don't realize, even like for Black history, we don't realize that it was black people selling black people. Like there was even just black slave owners even in the South.
But
so my thing is like when I go back to the basics of like that certain aggressiveness to even when I think of like now when like a lot of people say like, oh my God, the rich is, you know, this like eat the rich and all this stuff. I don't necessarily believe in that, but I do believe that there's that certain, I would say, violent nature that you do need to keep in your back pocket when you do want to build as a man. Because there's a lot of stuff that got to get moved out your way.
You're supposed to
like, I'm not going to say necessarily stealing. Nah, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that.
Capture. You're not getting into all that.
But but I'm saying like when it comes forward, it's so. But like when I think of like manhood, I do think that like very stern. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is how we're gonna get it done. And everybody has to go into that mission with no holds barred. Like
exactly, it's a last resort though. as a last resort. Like if we're at war with somebody and we need to go capture somebody on the other side, maybe make a deal. Gotta do that. But should we wake up in the morning and make a plan behind doing those? That's probably evil, right?
For sure.
You feel me?
For sure.
That's probably the where evil come from. You feel me? Like just to really ponder on it versus it's just I gotta do this right now. You know what I mean? It's like the soldiers at war versus the head of the wars. You're just doing it because if you don't do this, somebody else gonna do it. You're gonna have to get your family. They're gonna go through all this and that. You gotta do it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And a part of me would say being a man is going against the violent ones sometimes. You know who's out of control. You know what I mean? Having composure to do that. You know what I mean?
So I want to add on to that. I want to ask. So which ways, because a phrase has been deemed as a very normal phrase as of now, which is toxic masculinity. So do you feel as though that violence is one of the reasons why people look at masculinity as toxic, being that that's something that is more of a man thing, violence and our nature of that exerting our physical strength?
I don't think that's where, I think toxic masculinity in this day and age is close to bull. You know what I mean? I think it's a way to keep us from exerting the power we naturally do have. That's me personally. I'm not saying that men are perfect, but I think the reason men aren't perfect is because they aren't being masculine at all in the first place. And then it gets written off as toxic masculinity when it really should probably be another word for it. You know what I mean? It's the thing of the sassy man takeover, all these things, but they'll label that toxic masculinity, controlling, narcissistic, you know, acting wild. Those ain't manly things. That's actually a man out of touch with himself. You feel what I'm saying? That's why they're not being like that. So I don't even think the word described men today is toxic masculinity. I don't think it's, unless you want to say that this is a man and he's being toxic and then say that together, toxic masculinity. But the real word masculinity, toxic masculinity would be brute strength, just yanking people up because you can. You know what I mean? That's toxic masculinity to me, you know what I mean? Straight abuse of your strength and the manipulation and all those things. That's real toxic masculinity. But the stuff they get into today with how men act, I don't even think that's toxic masculinity. I think that's a man that just hasn't become a man or don't know how to be a man. You know what I mean? A man is somebody who, like, you know, the old days the man had the money, the bread, and then they start putting their own habits. That's when masculinity becomes toxic. You know what I mean? When you're in charge, you're handling your business as a man, but at the same time, you got these vices and everybody got to feel them. You know what I mean? Like the man that come home whooping his kids because he mad from work, but he still take care of them. That could be toxic masculinity. I think it's a mixture in there, you know what I mean? Versus what the world today considers that toxic masculinity. I wouldn't even know what that meant, toxic masculinity, honestly.
And I think we can, like, if it's cool, I can adapt into more of a spiritual aspect as well too. Is like if we was to use the term toxic masculinity within spiritual, that's just an unhealed individual.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think
man that hasn't really
he ain't really grew who himself yet.
He might still be a boy in a man's body. Instead of calling him toxic, and really you call him toxic, but really he hasn't even reached manhood or the want to be a man. I feel like a man is someone who handles all the things you describe as a man, but now he lets it go to his head. You know what I mean? And now he might treat his woman bad. He might treat his kids bad. He might go out starting fights because he big and bold. You feel me? That's toxic masculinity. I don't think that's out there, especially in the black community. I say it, but it's not even toxic. That's hyper masculinity. So what is toxic masculinity? You know what I mean? I still don't know what that means.
I need you to go more in depth with that, Trent, though, like the spiritual aspect of what you said, like that coming from spiritual aspect.
Most of the time it can just be the perspective of an unhealed individual. Going even deeper down into like the mindset, like we talk about generational curses, like the things my pops do sometimes can be something I used to do. Because I never healed, you know what I'm saying? From what we consider a toxic masculinity, but like it's a carried on trait. So think about it, like a lot of men suffer from what their fathers suffer with. You know what I mean? So like for me, my pops.
If you grew up around them.
Right. You know what I mean? So like I grew up around my pops, but he wasn't there. So like even relationships now, bro, because like my mom and dad been together for like 50 something years since middle school. My pops, he ain't even there mentally. So for me, I'm able to check in and check out. So most people are like, oh, that's a toxic masculinity trait.
I would agree with that. I would think that's an actual toxic masculinity trait, because you said your pops was with your mom 50 years, but he's checked out of the relationship and everything, but he's still a father and he handling his business.
Correct.
Right?
Some in relationships, I'm a for shawty.
I think toxic masculinity is way deeper than the words that they just throw out there for sensation. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A man that wake up, do what he got to do, but he not happy.
Correct.
So I do want to read something to y'all when we keep going to this term masculinity, right? So this is from this Center for Male Psychology. Now this source is a .com source. I will tell you that, but it is psychology. I know. No, for sure. I usually like when I say certain, but this is not a factual source that I'm really looking to expand. This is just the way that they organize this statement. I really like it, and I would like to bring this to the discussion. So they said the term toxic masculinity is often seen in the media, but the evidence that toxic masculinity explains men's bad behavior is based on a circular argument that 1, violence and sexism are part of the definition of masculinity, and 2, violent and sexist men are proof that masculinity is toxic. However, the reality is that 1, masculinity does not need to be defined by violence or sexism, and 2, psychologists know that violence and sexism are usually rooted in trauma, not masculinity. In fact, some of the very worst examples of violent sex offending are caused by men having been sexually abused in childhood, often by female caregivers. It is surely difficult to empathize with violent and sexist men, but we know that there are evidence-based ways of dealing with them. Professional psychologists have an ethical obligation to use treatments that are evidence-based, not faddish programs offering to help men overcome their burdensome masculine traits. So what do we think about that?
I think that aligns with kind of what I was saying. Those traits that they consider toxic masculinity wouldn't be toxic masculinity at all. That's an unhealed individual, as he said. You know what I mean? It's more of a bad habit than a masculinity that anybody can have. Anybody can have that bad habit, you know? You know what I mean? We act like these things are just for men, you know what I mean? Violence and sexism, like women do the same thing on their end, you know what I mean? They look at men as objects to get them stuff and take them places, you know what I mean? That could be in anybody. So I think that's like violence is hyper masculinity. You know, when you always want to be violent, you're hyper masculine. You're not toxic masculine. You know what I mean? Because you're not even under control as a man to be toxic. You're just hyper. You know what I mean? And then you're hypersexual. Those are two different things that could apply to anybody. For sure. That's what I believe personally on that. I think men struggle with those things, period. And I think you'd be a real masculine man and still struggle with those things. You feel me? I don't think that makes you toxic as much as you got more to learn. You know what I mean? More to control. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, for sure.
For sure.
I definitely believe that. For us, it definitely comes from an unhealed state. Because even I think as I start to like realize what is the difference between our predecessors and us today, because there's been like a clear shift. There's been a clear shift in what is considered masculine, how men move, all of that. And maybe it is because we have the leisure of technology now, and we have what we deem as leisure time. But what's crazy is I don't feel like the work ethic is the same. I don't think the work ethic is the same because of the fact that we think more mentally of how to get ahead now, because we can think smarter and get ahead way faster than our predecessors, where it's like how you were speaking it too, where like their way to wealth might have been straight overtime at the factory, at the Ford factory. That was their bag at the time. That was the bag. Now we're looking at folk where it's like you can get on a stream or you can get this and you getting 6 figures a month off that. You know what I'm saying? Or you're able to own a brand, a clothing brand or whatever, and make 25 racks. You know what I'm saying? There's just different things there's different avenues that we have now where it's like we're sitting back and more on the psychology end of things, of what can we do to get ahead, but it doesn't feel the same as how our old heads do, and I think that's why they don't understand us either anymore. Like there's a split in being able to go to Unk in the neighborhood now, to where it's like it feels like the only folk I could really console in, or really look for that next step, is my guys my age or near my age. You know what I'm saying? Rather than going to old head OG, because even mentors, they always gonna be like, no, they just don't get the times that we live in. It's always the same to them. They're like, no, you could just do it this way that I did it. It's like, but it's not that way.
So kind of like to throw your question back at you. You asked us like, what does manhood mean to us? And we said that we're not following generation. However, based off what you said, do you think the miscommunication or the disparate would be because we were never trained to do that, or lack of mentorship?
Definitely lack of mentorship. Wasn't trained to do it. Being black, this has a lot to do with that. So it's hard to separate these conversations when you're talking about all men and then specifically black people, because we all going through the same thing no matter the race, but we all know it's a hardcore focus on the destruction of black men and the black family too. So it's just a whole nother level of that. You know what I mean? So
can I ask a question? Go deep.
Yeah.
Is your father in your life?
He's in my life.
Yeah.
He's in my life. I didn't grow up in the house with my father, but when I turned 19, I moved with him, and he's been in my life very heavy. I always knew who my dad was. Yeah. Off and on relationship, I'd say, but just ever since I turned 19, consistent. As an adult, been very consistent. I can safely say that he's been a healthy part of my life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And growing up, you get to understand his side and the mama's side. You know what I mean? Man always get looked at as the bad one, but you do grow up and understand things and why things work out the way it was. So, he's in my life today for sure, and he's always been in my life, maybe just as a distance. He was down here in Charlotte. I lived in Philly. So I knew him, but I was up there. Yeah.
Now, would you say, based off like your experience with your father, that kind of defines what manhood is to you?
That's a tough question. My experience with my father defines what manhood is to me. Yeah, in my time with him, I was raised in my grandfather's house too, so my grandfather gave me a lot of that. Too. You know what I mean? Like, so thinking about my granddaddy growing up, how he used to have us shoveling snow, making money with shoveling the snow, raking leaves, picking trash up, making sure people don't walk in the yard, tell them get off the yard, like things men supposed to do. My granddaddy, when he was younger, had his toxic ways, but as an older man, a developed, resolved man, he was just a great man, you know what I mean? And then growing up, getting around my dad, he did everything a man was supposed to do. We have our back and forth, never go there, it's just man talk. Being around good men makes you a good man most of the time. Makes you a better man. It's just what it should be. 100%.
And what I would say too, bro, is just like, because I know Germ's story. He knows about mine knowing yours too. It's just like you just said. It's just like being around a good set of men. Because what I just thought about too is just like, think back in the day, like unks and bros used to do that together as men. You know what I mean? And they might be drinking, you know what I'm saying, doing their thing, but like that's they iron sharpen irons, bro.
Back then, it was more pressure to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? Today, it's not as much pressure to do the right thing. Back then, it was like, especially being black, do a wrong thing, make a misstep move, your whole life taken away from you by another set of people or whatever, or even from your own people. You know what I mean? So it was more pressure to do the right thing, go work hard, take care of your family, take care of your kids. But today, it's like, with all the systems they got set up from welfare to child support, it's like it's more excuses for men to say, I ain't gotta be with them, I ain't gotta take care of that, I can still handle my business from over here. But I don't think that being a man is being completely individual to yourself, you know what I mean? Personally, I think you're supposed to be around people and help people and influence people the proper positive way, you know what I mean? What's good is yourself, working on yourself, you're just gonna be in a box. Some people are built like that, not saying you're wrong if you're built like that, but if the whole world knew like that, it would be a complete imbalance, because we'd be damn near free as men, but what the women doing with the kids and the family, you know what I mean? Like, we can't, we're supposed to be around.
Real talk question, because now y'all just went into like the fact that how basically masculine figures affect a lot, in our lives. So then can we also speak about the exchange of a lot of men relying on women more nowadays to console in, to confide in, to assist with issues, and then not only that, but to think about the amount of single mother homes and all of that, where this young boy got nothing but his mother and his aunties around him.
That's bad.
You know what I'm saying? Like, now when we reach in that situation, could we say that picking up that trait caused confusion to extend that what we call toxic masculinity?
Absolutely, because the thing is, we all know about women is they ride their emotions.
Yeah.
And as a boy, watching women ride their emotions, it can rub off on you. So now when you're older, when you get mad, you're riding that wave, but you're a man, so you can cause a lot of damage.
Chaos.
You get in a fight with another man, some people won't even want to get in between that. When it's women, real men get in between, and everybody get in between. Y'all stop that unless there's other women around that's in that incident.
Real quick. Can we visit that? Because isn't that what they say now is an issue with masculinity, the fact that we weren't expressing our emotions enough? So then men got to expressing emotions all different type of ways, and now it's you emotional, you're sassy, you're all this different type of stuff. So what, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was that not a thing? Like,
what makes a man sassy, bro?
Look,
I don't know. I don't be on that road, but like,
what makes a man sassy, bro?
What makes a dude sassy is when he arguing from his ego. Not when he arguing to like really understand where you coming from, but like instead he's arguing from a point of view like, you say this about me, I'm gonna say this about you. Or you say this about me, you gonna act like this.
Like a woman.
Like a woman. That's like a woman. That would be sassy.
Yeah.
Like you tell a man something like man to man, like, but they take it like, I don't know what you talking about, like woo to woo, like that's a little sassy. You feel me? Instead of saying, instead of like, oh bro, I don't think this is right. Like why you say that? And then we talking about it. They might be like, what you mean? Like what you talking about? Like that's sassy.
Yeah.
That's what make a man sassy to me.
Yeah.
You can't talk to them without their ego getting in the way of what y'all talking about. Like sometimes you can think somebody and be wrong, but if they don't give you the conversation, you gonna run with that thought forever now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a sassy thing to do instead of having a conversation. Like why would you say that? Make you think that.
Yeah.
You feel me? And then y'all come to an understanding. Like that's what men's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Even based off that, what you said too is like, it's gonna sound deep, but what makes a man sassy is communication. If you can't communicate, you know what I'm saying? Same as that thing, bro.
Communication.
Because a man should be able to go into a room and communicate like what he wants, how the room should set, how it should be.
Without your feelings getting hurt.
That's it. Like I said what I said. Oh, you said cool, bro. I appreciate criticism. Move on.
Like
sassy man.
Sassy would be like, oh, we on a project together. And Jern called me out like, Reed, you need to do a little more work. And I'd be like, I need to do a little more work. But instead of having that conversation, I might just distance myself. That's sassy. That's weird. That's a lot of things. Instead of saying, damn, all right, what you think I need to be doing? You know what I mean? We get to the gritty about this. That's manly. You feel me?
Yeah.
Accepting criticism is manly. You know what I mean? Staying away from criticism, that's sassy. That's what I believe step one of sassiness is, personally.
That's real. And so we would say like that kind of that passive aggressiveness.
Yeah.
Same thing. We all had that girl where it's like, you know, you ask shawty, what's wrong? Nothing.
Exactly.
And you don't do all that. Nothing.
Exactly.
What you mean, shawty? Nothing. Like it's all on you. What you mean, nothing? And so, and that goes to that part of, I feel like, healthy masculine traits. And this is when I go more to the lighter version of what I was speaking about earlier. But that very sternness, it doesn't have to be necessarily violence, but that being willing to be like, hey, look, this is what's happening. This is what I'm saying. And this is the thing where I feel as though because we've confided in, I don't know what happened in the switch of age where it's like we did start confiding in women and speaking to women enough. And like, I don't know if y'all heard this a lot, but like I'll be talking to some women, they'll speak, oh, you know, I hear what you said and I get what you said and I accept what you said, but it's just how you said it.
That's a fact.
And it's like, so, okay, but I told you to.
Because I tell a girl that quick too, like, don't say it like that. Like, just tell me normal.
But my thing is, sometimes it even comes from, if you speaking something straight, you know what I'm saying? You just saying it, okay, I have a deeper tone of voice. Yeah, okay, I'm just saying it like, you know, straightforward. Do y'all think that there's an issue with, like, is that a version of toxic masculinity? If you're able to articulate yourself, you put your point out there, does the how matter? is that a masculine trait to care how you say it, or is it just about look?
Before we move on,
go ahead.
We gotta flip this over here. So it's been a power hour with this. We're gonna flip this, reset the room, keep the fashion going, and we'll be back, baby.
We done got warmed up. Let's get it.
I was like, that's like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's
not an hour.
That's a 30-minute joint, but we'll flip it.
Oh, V.
But yeah, what you was saying, you said is that what you was just saying.
So I was saying, like, so is it a thing of masculine to not really like to walk in a room? Let's say you got something to say. Yeah, if you walk in and you say, look, you can articulate what you're saying well. You put it out there. There's not like a tone of voice that you're changing. You're not changing the inflection of your voice. You put it straight out. Oh, yeah. Is that wrong?
No, that's not wrong. But it's still wavelengths of how you can say things wrong. You know what I mean? I feel like in that way, it's fine to do that. You know what I mean? Like, he's serious. He means this. Let me consider doing this. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like, that's good. That's how my granddaddy talked to us. That's how my daddy talked to me. That's how you're supposed to talk to. But, you know, there's also a way of saying things disrespectfully. You know what I mean? Like how these days a daddy might be like, no, I mean, you can talk like this. It's fine. You can talk to your kids however you want to talk to them. It'd be fine. But, you know, I'd be like, clean that shit up. Like, clean that shit up. Like, you feel me? Like, yeah, you can do that. But he gonna carry that trait in the future too. And he might do it differently. He might talk to a girl like that. You feel me? He might talk to this. You know what I mean? You know, there's certain things you want to adjust. When you do want to adjust, you want to be a better person. You feel me? That's what I say on that. For sure. Because, you know, you're not talking about how women talk, but women a lot of times, they definitely, when they talking, like their emotions get so in there, like they'll say something so real, but the way they say it to you is like they talking at you and like disrespectfully. You feel me? And then it could be the same thing with a dude, where it's like he's saying something valid, but the way you telling me is coming from a place of like almost still ego. You know what I mean? And that could be toxic masculinity. You know what I mean? Because that's what I think toxic masculinity. It is a man, like all the traits of a man, but he's semi-abusing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I consider toxic masculinity. I think the men that haven't grown to be men can't even be considered toxic masculinity because they haven't even made masculinity a part of their life in the first place. There's men out there, like you said, your father did everything as a man he had to do, but he wasn't happy. You know what I mean? That can make him toxic. Yeah. But he's still a man. That's it. He's just a toxic man. Yeah. But then you got the men that don't handle business, and they might be cool as hell. Yeah. Yeah. That ain't toxic masculinity as much as it's just a guy who ain't got to do the manly things that he got to do. You know what I mean? That's just what I think of it. I understand people might have their own definitions. Yeah. So that's what I think toxic masculinity is. The man who come in off work pissed off at his boss, you feel me? Yeah. Can't control it, take it out on his family. You feel me? Yeah. That's toxic masculinity to me. The man who go to the bar, pissed off, got something going on that happened at home, and he just want to get into a fight. That's toxic masculinity. Yeah. You feel me? Can't control yourself. Yeah. You know what I mean? Saying something stern is normal. You should do that. But not knowing when to step down from that and just get back to normal could be a problem for a lot of men. They want to stay on that wavelength of just always my way or the highway. You feel me? I ain't got to hear nothing out of you. You feel me? Yeah. Don't say nothing to me about nothing. That's toxic masculinity to me. You feel me? Yeah. Cause a lot of men got that sternness in their voice, but they still can be wrong about things. So now they're leading off fear and intimidation. It's toxic. It's toxic. Cause they don't really, you don't even know how somebody really feels. Yeah. Cause you're so masculine but toxic at the same time. You don't want to hear nobody else speak. Yeah. You feel me? You handle everything. I'm the man. You feel me? That's toxic masculinity to me. It's good. Personally.
And I would say too, for like myself, I'm learning. As I grow, I'm about to hit 30. Sure.
Goddamn.
I'm a big ump now, bro. But my pops is my pops. One thing I would say, my pops always knew how to like provide. I ain't got one of those.
Those are mandatory male traits, masculine traits. Providing. Always. Protection. You can provide, protect, and all those things, and still come home and just not know how to communicate with your kids. Yeah. It's a fact. Yeah, so where I was at with it was part of being masculine or part of being a man. Because masculine is a dominant male thing. Just like, you got chemicals in your body, but we gotta understand that you gotta be in touch with your feminine side a little bit as a man. You get what I'm saying? To be balanced. It's a piece of the puzzle. So I feel like we definitely get what I'm saying, to be balanced. It's a piece of the puzzle. So I feel like we definitely need to make sure we understand that when we talk about masculinity, is that when we talk about calming down those traits, that's so we can be in touch with our feminine side. Don't mean you are a feminine man, it just means you are capable of expressing yourself. Yeah. You know what I mean? It don't mean getting caught up in those feelings though. You're not riding them, but really understanding why you feel the way you feel and being able to express that without being toxic. Because I just looked it up. Toxic masculinity, and I kind of like what this chat GPT said. It said, it's traditional masculinity isn't toxic. It becomes problematic when stereotypes are enforced. Basically saying that it could manifest into emotional repression, suppressed vulnerability. It's when a man becomes so caught up in his feelings and holding them in that he now becomes overly dominant to justify and becoming controlling. You know what I mean? That's toxic masculinity. When you have the qualities of a man, but you're using it in an unhealthy way. You get what I'm saying? That's why I say I would separate the boy man, from an actual man that's going through toxic masculinity. You get what I'm saying? That's where I'm at with toxic masculinity. I think you have to first be a man to be a toxic masculine man. You feel what I'm saying? You can't say that you're not a man yet. You know, you don't even got the responsibilities of the man. You know, so you're actually able to act the way you act in a way. You get what I'm saying? Versus a man that got all these responsibilities, but he's not handling it with. You know what I mean? So he becomes controlling, dominant. He might cuss his.
Say that when you think about it back then, because it's kind of like you're expressing it as like this passage to manhood, as like you're a young boy, you're a young boy, and it's like there's so much things you had to defeat, and like back then, even when you go to like tribal senses, there was always like a passage to manhood. Like there was a mission, or there was something that the village would send you on to say, hey, look, so this is what you got to do. This is what you're going to go do. You come back as a man once you go through this passage. But now where is that? What is the passage to manhood? How are men developing, or I should say young boys, or even, you know, people that's in men bodies, but still, you know, maintain a young boy mentality? Like
that's where culture plays a factor. Because obviously as black folks, we're trying to build a culture currently still. You know what I mean? Got it built up, destroyed, and now trying to rebuild it again. But even as just Americans as a whole, white people, black people, main thing I'm talking about, because foreigners still have these rites of passage. Jewish people still have these rights. Asian people still do these things that you're talking about, like how to be a man, what you gotta do, whether you like it or not. Indians, all of them, they still hold on to them cultures. Even Mexicans and stuff like that, they still got in it. It becomes toxic, and no matter what race you is. But I say as American, we're so caught up on freedom that we don't care about those things. You know what I mean? We're so caught up on being free that we don't want to go through these rites of passages. You know what I mean? That's why people get into these sub things like Muslims, and that's why people join groups so they can have that accountability around them. I feel like in America it's just a lack of care of mentality. You know what I mean? Like as long as you get a job, make some money, you can get away with whatever you want as a man, honestly, if you want to be for real. You make money, don't break the law, of course. Even if you can break the law, if you got money, you can do whatever you want.
In the globe, this is a global thing. It's a global like thing. When I look at things like diplomatic immunity, like 100%. Diplomatic immunity is very real. Where it's like there's people that come down from Saudi, and it's like they can do as they'll come here and do as they please, and literally they look at like search my name up. Yeah, you know who my father is? You can't even touch me. You can't even touch me because of who my father is. Diplomatic immunity. And so it's like the thing to act like these laws and all this is real for everybody is unrealistic, because it's like there's some people that literally strictly function outside of that. They don't.
Outside, they live within the system. They work the system, but they're not a part of the system. They can get out of anything they want to get into. You know, you got these great big families that can do whatever they want. They got the money. They got places overseas they can flee to and have somebody handle their business here. They got people that handle it after they die. You know what I mean? That's structure, and that speaks to their level of just seriousness about their power. But you know, as a human being, it still turns toxic. You know what I mean? No matter what. But
can we stay there real quick? I want to ask this. So I don't know if y'all seen, you know what I'm saying, just or heard, you know, certain conspiracies and things, if you will. But that as like government forces and so-called quote unquote higher powers are looking to kill masculinity by doing things like certain hormones in our foods,
absolutely,
things in our water. So when it comes down to that, do y'all believe that, just how we explain the powers that may be, that we allow, that we say no, they can do whatever they want, they can do whatever they want? Who's the enforcer of it? And why? What would they get out of holding down the man and saying no? We want our men to grow and develop as less masculine.
I know why, for sure. Because they don't want men to focus on what the people in power are doing wrong. When you're masculine and you're a man, you buck the system a lot. Back in the day, they was bucking the system, changing things. Just because it's a law don't mean it's the right thing. Slavery was legal, right? Jim Crow was legal, right? But it took those men and women to tap into their masculine side to say, look, that's wrong, and we're going to buck that. But by making men more feminine, we're less likely to care about what the people in power are doing wrong. We're less likely to say anything about it too. So it lets them get away with more by not having them masculine figures around. You know what I mean? That's would be the main reason for making men more feminine, because the men won't be able to develop leadership to or organize to buck the system that's being greedy, controlling, or evil. You know what I mean? So it's mandatory for them to make us less masculine so they can maintain their power in the first place.
Let's go there. You kept saying the word buck. Let's talk about slavery.
Oh, Lord.
What used to happen?
It's called buck breaking, where you had a masculine man wanted to stop something from happening, and they said, nah, we're not letting that happen. We're going to go so far that we're going to rape you, take your manhood from you. And that's why they put the chemicals in our, so they don't got to rape us literally anymore. They can put chemicals in our food, make our water less,
make us weaker.
You know what I mean? Lower our testosterone, make us weaker mentally and physically, right? So now when things going on that we see that we don't like, all we do is yap about it like a woman. Organized to do anything about it.
Okay, let's get to it. So if we get into it, so look,
this over again.
For real, if we get into it, and we spoke about this. Right now, we're gonna speak specifically geographically America.
Let's do it.
We here. We can announce to that. What's the deal with then misleading men to not have a belief in anything, in a sense where, for an example, in Christianity, you're not really worried about the laws of the world still. So the same way how we say the people of power financially are not worried about the laws, people that are within the study of Christ and strive and work every day to be Christ-like, a part of that word is to really not to ignore the law, to ignore the laws that's been actually made, and abide by the law that's God made.
Right. But
so now we are in a time where it seems like that's where it's like a bad thing if you are disciplined to a religion, and it's more looked at as like, in this modern time, like you're old, you would, like I said, like it's a toxic thing, like you're just too into that, you believe that this is that, you believe that this is that, but it's like that's functioning under a different type of law system.
Absolutely, but being a religious man, you're supposed to understand that from the jump. The Bible would, if you do it, whatever book you read in, they're going to say that people aren't going to agree with you for acting like this. That's part of being that person. You got to understand the world is lost and they want to do what they want to do, especially in America, freedom. You know what I mean? That's the whole point of freedom, you know, so you can separate from religion and all that. Even though religion's not really the problem to me. You know what I mean? It's actually might be the lack of religion. You know what I mean? And but to people, rules and restrictions is just so, you're forcing me to do this, you're forcing me to be like that. They don't want to be part of that. You know what I mean? But the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
The results speak for themselves in the way of the same people that when we claim that there's a freedom or a free will that we're doing, is it ever really free will when people that do as they please still claim to have a miserable life, still claim to be going through anxieties,
Absolutely.
depressions, all of that, where somebody that may have submitted themselves to a certain discipline and they speak to them and say, look, I have found peace. I have peace. In the sense of realizing that the things that was holding me and when I thought I was being free, I was actually being held captive. And there was stuff
Absolutely.
within me that I couldn't do on my own. Same thing like addictions, for an example. Like when they say you can't just take somebody off the street and say, get off this addiction. You know it's wrong for you. You think they don't know that this is fucking up their life, that this is taking them this way? But if free will existed, why would they not have the free will to just say, okay, I'm gonna stop today and put it down and not do it? Is this of the spirit? Is it of the mind? What we're going back to this.
Before we even move forward into this, I gotta back off to what you said. Mind you, this is coming from somebody who used to be a licensed minister for almost like 4 or 5 years. So like I studied the Bible, and also within college, I was head of the NAACP and a BSU. So I kind of studied like slave mentality and also religion. Something you said that's powerful, bro. Basically like how men are like depending on religion or whatever it may be, but this is based off my belief, my experience. I know from my experience, I don't think it's a religion issue, it's a relationship issue.
Yeah.
So like, you can use a system, and we're not saying the Bible's a system, I believe in the Bible, but you can use an item or anything to control somebody's relationship and turn it into something else.
Absolutely. Religion is used as a tool to control people, but the religion ain't the problem, it's the person doing that. That's the problem. You know, if everybody followed their religion, I mean, it don't matter what religious book you read as long as it's submitting to God. Obviously, you got cults and stuff. Now, get into that. We're talking about the major religions, from Buddhism to Hinduism to Christianity, Muslim. If they would, the world followed their religions, it'd be a great place.
That's it.
It would. If Christians don't follow, they'd be the least following of our religion, for sure. We don't realize how hardcore Christianity books are because we ignore it so much.
That's
you know what I mean? People pick and choose, right? But it all adds up to a greater cause. But people like Christianity, man, it's a good book. It's a good thing to follow, 100%. And I understand the idea of following those laws instead of the governmental ways, but you know, it all goes hand in hand because the government was built off of religion at first. You know what I mean? It's strayed away from it, but the core of the government, God we trust. You feel me? It was built off of the 10 Commandments. You know what I mean? You're a Christian nation. It was built off of religion. It just strayed away from it. And then I can say even with slavery, like, you know, people like to use the argument, oh, why is black people Christians? Well, because they took half of the book and cut it up to paint a picture of this is what the Bible said. When them slaves really started reading the whole book, it was like, hold up. It say the least of those would have the most of those, and the master would be in hell. Preacher, they had him reading specific things to these slaves, you know what I mean, to keep them round up. And he was reading the whole Bible. And he's like, hold up. You feel me? And that's what made him rebel, because he started reading the whole Bible. So I don't even agree with that. I don't think religion is the problem. I think it's the people that's using it as a tool to control other people. That's the problem. You know what I mean?
What made you fall in love with God, bro?
What made me fall in love with God? I'm definitely in love with God, but am I in love with any particular religion? I can't say I am. But in love with God? That's a tough question, man. I just feel like everything works out, man. You feel me? And I just feel like that just comes from a higher power. You feel me? Just accepting things for the way it is and navigating. That's what makes you fall in love with God. Understanding that you still got to get up another day and be your best self. You know what I mean? that's tapped in with God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what made me fall in love with God.
All right, pause. Jerm, what made you fall in love with God?
Shoot.
Tough question.
It's a tough question.
What made me
My
fall?
mom, going to be specific, my mother had us in the church. My grandparents, the Jehovah's Witnesses. My mama a Christian, so they used to have that little thing. But we was heavily involved in religion as a youngin'. As an adult, they don't hold us to the same accountability even close. But I'm still in love with God for sure. You feel me? It was introduced to me at a young age. I'm not in love with the system of teaching God all the time. You feel me? But I'm in love with the ideas of God and everything around it. You feel me? I believe I'm if the world could be a hardcore place, I'd be hardcore with it if it was about what God's saying. Yeah. But people ain't following that, so that's why I'm not in love with any specific religion, because everywhere you go, it's like some bull. Yeah. You feel me? And it's like people ain't following their religion even close. They ignore what they want to ignore, accept what they want to accept.
I think that, shoot, for me, honestly, when God hit, it was because I knew that I didn't have the power. Like, I felt like I was. Once I realized, like I said, life was moving a certain way. There's certain stuff that you just can't control. Like everything that I thought that I was doing out of free will was all a setup. Like everything that I thought I was doing out of free will was my demise. Yeah. So it was everything of the reason why I'm questioning the whys and how do I get out of this situation? Yeah. What's the path? What am I doing wrong? Yeah. And my first having the beef with God a little bit at first too, of just like, why would you do this to me? Why would you put me in this position? Why would you take this person? Why would you do something? Like questioning the whys, but then at the same time starting to discover, I think, doing the walk and like realizing like there was certain steps that like people would tell me about myself that I had to come back and realize I wouldn't have that attribute if I didn't go through this. I wouldn't have this skill. I wouldn't have this knowledge.
How much is that
if I went through this? Yeah, and so it's just like, okay, and then you start realizing, I'm like, okay, just because God is put in this light does not mean that God is just, I don't know why everybody makes God this just sweet being that's just supposed to be just off.
Okay, I love you. That's what makes you fall in love with God too. Yeah, God is a person that is strict.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
His word is his word.
And he stands on business. You feel me?
Very much so. And that's the part that like I think the falling in love, and like I said, I've done my own journey. I was about to go into shamanhood. I'm coming from Reiki, being a Reiki master. So I was very much in the energy practitioning, and not only that, my West African roots, like understood hoodoo and all of that. I get it. I get how energy works. I see it. I felt like I've been up and down the spiritual realms and stuff like that.
Those things aren't inherently bad. It's just a tool that some people take and use in an evil way. Right. And it gets stigmatized.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And those people get affected too. Like that's the thing. That's what people don't realize. They can affect your spirit. It can torment you. And so it's just like when I really got close and like realized that okay, I'm really here and I'm available and I'm open to see who you are, what's going on. He left the most. God left the most when I asked that question. For me to be alone and really discover who God is, like for real. And that was one thing, like with me, like I said, before I went to shamanhood, I got questioned. I'm like, you need to read that Bible in front of that. Yeah. Like, you can't go into shamanhood before you read this book. And I'm thrown because I'm like, what's this book? I've been in the church, I've been involved around it, but I've heard certain verses, got certain verses, read a little bit. I've never read the story to really get and grasp it. Man. And so as I did and realized, okay, this saying of Christ came and Christ did this and all that, I just started seeing all these answers unfold, and I said, dang, okay, so this is why certain connections are made. And even when I did a dip in the Quran, because I'll read that later, but like it's the fact that some of the verses in the Quran pointing back to the Bible. I'm like, oh, well, seeing different verses.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of these religions are very more intertwined than people would think. Mm-hmm. The overhead is very different, but the guts of it are very much the same for all of them. You know what I mean? Buddhist first law, one of the laws of Buddhism is accepting that negativity is going to come in your life. That's one of the first laws of Buddhism. That's one of the first laws, my brother.
Hold on.
For sure. It's one of the first laws, man, understanding that negativity is going to take place in your life. And as the Bible says the same thing. Things are going to happen to you.
Yeah.
For sure. All of them say that. Things are going to happen.
You sure? Yeah, I think I was looking at scripture like just now, bro, and like while you were talking, bro, like it's for me, like I base my life off of like biblical stories because like that's what kind of like led me. But like what you just said, like there's certain seasons where like you gotta isolate yourself. Like that was David. Like David was a whole king, bro. Anointed king, but yet because this man he killed Goliath, he took on the city's biggest challenge, defeated it, but because another man's insecurity, it sent him to isolation. You know what I mean? I think oftentimes look at the systems is like they use that insecurity.
Well, yeah, that's isolation. It's great for self-growth. You know what I mean? Like even back then, they sent men in the woods for a few days just to isolate, survive on your own, and come back a better person. You feel me? Isolation powerful. You know, being around people, being influenced. That's how you never find a way. You got to go and think alone. You know what I mean? So I think all scriptures and all religions speak to that too. The idea of isolating yourself and thinking and getting your energy right and then going back out into the world. You know what I mean? A lot of people are never isolated because of these phones, because of these drugs, and because of these TVs and all these things. They're never truly isolated. It's constant stimulation. Always somebody else thinking for you. Or you feeling something off, feeling energy off somebody else. You're alone, you with God. That's when you're with God. There's nobody else in your head.
So if we here, I want to bring it towards a close with this right here.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna let it sit there. But nah, so with all this being said, because I'm big on resolutions, and we've picked and pried and kind of got into some details about, I think, really covering a lot about what was considered as toxic masculinity, what just pure masculinity is, and why certain things are there. But what do y'all think is the solution towards moving forward with this generation? And what's the catalyst to turn and represent what so-called the new man is? Because I think we can all agree that it's not a thing of going back and learning. It's not going back and learning and becoming something that we don't even need to become. But moving forward, what is that new man look like?
I think it do, and I'm not even. You got to be religious or spiritual. You got to get into one of the two. I feel like that's what a man's supposed to do. They're supposed to either be in tune with their spirit or in tune with their religion. They need both at the same time. So, like that's what a man, the Bible say, that man's supposed to submit to God, and then a woman will be able to submit to you because you submitted to God already. You feel me? You're not submitting to the woman. You're not submitting to your children. You're submitting to God. So that goes back into religion. And religion and spirituality, whichever way you want to go. The spirituality, I think of it as individual versus religion is this group governance, you know what I mean? But one of the two, the man got to get in tune with his spirit to resolve those toxic masculinity traits. And that's the main revolution off the rip. And we got to teach people that, you know, we got to condone it, you know what I mean? We got to promote it, you know what I mean? Promoting the right thing, that's something to do.
I would say for me, when I'm learning, I always take my stuff on from a spiritual aspect, because that's just where I'm in my life. For me in this season, when it comes to manhood, I'm learning to trust a true father based off of what a true father is, meaning at the end of the day, I'm going to trust God regardless, because he's always made a way. So as a man, that's my motto, that's my mindset. If God did it, then if he's in me, I can get it done too. So I guess from the next season for myself in my life, it's just honoring not only the man that's in me, but the man that's above.
I have to agree with y'all. That's really the way. Like, honestly, I feel as though it's all written in your heart. You know, God doesn't want to mislead us, and I think that this transformation that's happening, even y'all, how we connected, like that was something of a supernatural state. We didn't know it was gonna happen, but everything was made for us to all be guided in the path to collide with each other at the end of the day. And then it was about what we do with it in this active walk of, oh, like this is where I'm because all of us are familiar with our purpose, it was that easier to come and just be ourselves and show how men can build something from, oh yeah, I've been doing my work on my own. I've been doing the work individually already. Now you telling me I got my brothers around me that's on that too, like because of the frequency that you've brought upon, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so, you know, having that purpose and that connection, that's a key for sure. And then I would say the second spot though will honestly just be mentally checking in with ourselves and having that emotional intelligence as well. Because I think that now we are opened up to a different time where it's like you know, back then folks was smacking their wives and shit around the house, like and calling it cool. That's stuff that we don't see as cool, right? That's not cool for us.
That's toxic masculinity.
You feel me? That's
what I call toxic masculinity. Right. Wasn't criminal at one point.
Right. So true. Now it is. So now I feel as though that's the new advancement to where we can emotionally articulate ourselves and come to a time where, you know, whether it's a room of women, men, whatever, we're also touching on that point. And it's not just how we get this train built, boom, boom. Also, while we got a team building the train, we also checking in on people like, hey bro, you good? You don't look like you came into work all hype today. You straight? You know what I'm saying? And being able to have that extra dialogue is the new generation of men that's able to honestly teach our predecessors on, look, this is how we can conduct ourselves better in this work.
That's good, bro.
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, good work, y'all. It's been the first, the pilot, a little teaser of the Lions Den pod. We gonna get back to y'all. Peace.
Peace out.
Much love.